The round that punched through the Humvee's windshield wasn't random. Staff Sergeant Kira Ashford knew that in the half second before physics took over, before the armored truck flipped 3 times into a wadi, before everything she knew
Do
about
you think
survival
we'll
became the
always be
only
out
thing
here?
standing
This
between
land
her
has a way
and a
of holding
shallow
on to
grave in
us,
the
but
desert.
we'll make our own
In
path.
that moment of weightlessness, one thought cut through the chaos. Grandpa Garrett was right. He was always right. When Kira came to, the heat hit her like a physical blow. 118 degrees, the kind that steals your breath, the kind that kills in hours if you're not careful. She pulled herself through the shattered window. Broken glass ground into her palms. Blood mixed with sand on her tongue. The world spun in lazy circles that made her stomach lurch. Focus, assess, adapt, act. SEAL training took over where consciousness faltered. Her M4 carbine was still strapped across her chest. 4 magazines, 120 rounds. The radio on her vest was crushed, shattered into electronic junk by the impact with the turret mount. Her camelback had ruptured, 3 liters of water already soaking into the sand beneath her boots. She had a knife, a first aid kit, 2 MREs that might have survived the crash, and somewhere close, getting closer, she could hear engines. Lots of them. The rest of her SEAL team was gone, scattered by the ambush, their vehicles racing away through dust and smoke trying to escape the kill zone. Standard protocol. If you can't extract everyone you save, who you can, and come back for the rest. Except the enemy was already closing in, and coming back might not be an option. Kira crawled to higher ground. Every movement sent pain lancing through her ribs. Probably cracked, definitely bruised. She'd had worse during Hell Week. From a rock outcropping 30 meters above the wreckage, she counted vehicles. 6, no 7. Professional military, not militia. They moved in coordinated search patterns. Methodical, disciplined, dangerous. She had maybe 3 minutes before they found the Humvee. Maybe 5 before they found her trail. The smart play was to run. Get distance. Hide. Wait for rescue. But something in her grandfather's voice whispered through the pain and the fear. When the enemy has the advantage, Kira, you don't play their game. You change the rules. You make them afraid. You become a ghost. She took a breath, tasted copper and grit. Then she moved. Not away from the enemy, parallel to them, using every micro-terrain feature, every shadow, every depression in the ground, the way Grandpa Garrett had taught her when she was 13 years old and thought she knew everything. The way that had kept American operators alive in deserts from Korea to Iraq to Afghanistan for 70 years. The old ways, because technology fails, but training endures. Summer 2010, Sonoran Desert, Arizona. Kira Ashford was 13 years old and furious about it. Her grandfather had driven her 6 hours into the desert, past the last gas station, past the last cell tower, past anything that resembled civilization. Now they stood in an ocean of sand and rock and heat that made her eyes water. A canteen, a poncho, a knife. That's what you get, Kira. 3 days. Find your way back to the truck. Or don't. Your choice. Grandpa, this is insane. Mom's gonna kill you. Your mother survived me teaching her survival skills. You will too. He handed her a worn compass. Korean War vintage. The kind they gave pilots in case they got shot down over the north. No batteries, no GPS chip, just magnetized metal and faith. Out here, this is worth more than any smartphone. Learn why. Colonel Garrett Ironside Ashford was 52 years old. He'd earned his nickname in the first Gulf War, leading classified operations behind Iraqi lines, while the rest of the world watched smart bombs on CNN. Special Forces. The kind of soldier they don't make movies about because the missions stay classified for 50 years. After retirement, he'd done something unusual. He'd started teaching. Not at military academies, not at official schools, private courses, small groups, the kind of training you couldn't get anywhere else, the kind the government pretended didn't exist. Young Kira didn't understand that part yet. She just knew Grandpa had taught her to shoot when she was 10, taught her to navigate by stars when she was 12, taught her that toughness wasn't about muscle, it was about will. Now apparently he was teaching her to not die in the desert. 3 days later, she stumbled back to the pickup truck, sunburned, dehydrated, exhausted, but alive. Grandpa Garrett was waiting. A cooler full of ice water sat in the truck bed. He handed her a bottle without a word. She drank half of it before she could speak. How'd I do? You're here. That's passing. He pointed to tire tracks in the sand. Company came by yesterday, asked what I was doing out here alone. Told them I was waiting for my granddaughter. They asked if you were okay. I said you were learning. Who were they? Government types, the kind who drive unmarked SUVs and carry weapons they don't advertise. She looked at the tracks. Fresh, recent. Were you training someone else out here before me? He smiled, the kind of smile that held secrets. Kira, there are things I can't tell you, things that stay classified long after I'm dead. But I can tell you this. The skills I'm teaching you, they've kept American operators alive in denied territory for decades. Korea, Desert Storm, Afghanistan, the locations change, the enemy changes, but the desert never changes. He pulled out a worn photograph from his wallet. It showed a younger version of himself. Desert camouflage, somewhere in Iraq, judging by the sand. He stood with a group of men, all of them hard-eyed, all of them armed. One face had been carefully cut out of the photo. This was February 1991, he said. Operation Desert Saber. The ground war. What they showed on TV lasted 4 days. What they didn't show lasted longer. We went deep into Iraqi territory, hunted high-value targets, Soviet advisors helping Saddam's chemical weapons program. But the Cold War was over. On paper, not in practice. He tapped the cutout section. We found 6 Russian GRU officers coordinating Iraqi forces. Our mission was to eliminate them, extract intelligence, get out clean. Did you quit? 5 out of 6. The 6th one escaped. I put a round through his shoulder, but he got away. Intelligence said he went back to Russia, disappeared. What happened to the photo, his face? I cut it out. Don't need to remember it. He pointed to the desert around them. But I remember what he taught me that night. What all my enemies have taught me. What's that? Survival isn't about being the strongest or the fastest or having the best gear. It's about being willing to do what others won't, to adapt when everyone else quits, to remember that in the desert there's no backup, no second chances, just you and your training. Kira looked at the photograph again. Did you ever see him again? The one who escaped? Not yet, but men like that don't forget. They carry grudges like other people carry wallets. If he's still alive, he's still angry. And if he ever figures out who I am, where I live, who my family is, he stopped, looked at her hard. That's why I'm teaching you this, Kira. Not because I think you'll join the military, not because I want you to be a soldier, but because the world is full of men like that Soviet officer. Men who don't quit, men who remember. And if they ever come from my family, I need to know my granddaughter can survive. She was 13. She didn't fully understand. But years later, in a different desert with different enemies, she would understand perfectly. The memory faded. Kira was back in the present, back in the heat, back in the fight. She'd moved 400 meters from the crash site, used every technique Grandpa Garrett had drilled into her. Low crawl, shadow movement, patience. The enemy vehicles had found her Humvee. Soldiers dismounted, searched the wreckage, called out in a language she didn't speak but understood the tone of. Excited, aggressive, hunting. They knew she was on foot, wounded, without water. They thought she was easy prey. From her concealed position, Kira allowed herself a thin smile. Thank you, Grandpa. Let's show them what easy prey looks like. 3 days earlier, forward operating base Liberty. The briefing tent was hot despite the air conditioning units running full blast. Commander Victoria Hayes stood at the front. 42 years old, MIT graduate, 15 years in naval special warfare. She had a reputation for running clean operations. By the book. No cowboys, no heroics, just professionals doing professional work. 8 SEAL operators sat in folding chairs. Men and women who'd trained together for months. The kind of team that moved like a single organism. Each operator knowing exactly what the others would do before they did it. Target is a high-value individual, Hayes said. She tapped the screen behind her. A photograph appeared. Middle-aged man, military bearing, enemy commander responsible for coordinating attacks against American forces. Intelligence puts him in this compound. She clicked to satellite imagery, a fortified structure on the outskirts of a hostile village, surrounded by walls, guard towers, the kind of place that said important person lives here. We go in fast, extract him, get out before his security forces can respond. She looked at each operator in turn. Questions. Master Chief Petty Officer Brennan Wolf raised a hand. Wolf was 58 years old, 30 years in the teams. He'd been a SEAL when half the people in the room were still in elementary school. Desert Storm veteran, Afghanistan, Iraq. Every major operation for 3 decades. The kind of operator who'd seen everything, done everything, survived everything. His face was weathered like old leather. His eyes were the kind that had watched friends die and kept moving forward anyway. ROE, he asked. Rules of engagement. Weapons tight unless fired upon. We want this guy alive for interrogation. But if it goes hot, you're cleared to defend yourselves with appropriate force. Wolf nodded, looked at the maps again. Something in his expression suggested he didn't believe a word of it. After the briefing, Kira performed her pre-mission ritual. She'd done it before every operation for the past 3 years. Since earning her trident. Since proving to every doubter that a woman could hack it in the teams. Every piece of equipment got checked twice. 3 times if she had time. M4 carbine, customized to her preferences. Upgraded trigger. Enhanced optics. Suppressor for close quarters work. She'd fired 10,000 rounds through this weapon. Knew exactly how it would behave at any range. Any condition. Magazines. 4 of them. 30 rounds each. Loaded with M855A1 enhanced performance rounds. The kind that punched through body armor and kept going. First aid kit, tourniquets, pressure bandages, morphine. The stuff that kept you alive long enough to get to real medical care. Camelback. 3 liters filled with water and electrolyte powder. The desert would try to kill you through dehydration before the enemy got a chance. Night vision, radio, strobe, signal mirror. The signal mirror was special. Grandpa Garrett had given it to her the day she left for basic training. Korean War issue, the kind they gave pilots in case they got shot down behind enemy lines. Same one he'd used in Iraq 1991. Keep this, he'd said. Technology fails, electronics break, but a mirror in sunlight that's worked for 1,000 years. Still works today. She'd carried it on every mission since. Hey, Ashford. She looked up. Petty Officer Owen Mallory stood in the doorway of the equipment tent. 31 years old, breacher specialist. The guy who blew holes in walls so the team could storm through. He had an easy smile and a reputation for staying cool under pressure. You ready for this? He asked. It's going to be hairy out there. Always ready. He walked closer, lowered his voice. Listen, I know it's been weird lately. If something happens out there, I just want you to know, you're good people, Kira. Your grandpa would be proud. She frowned. What are you talking about? Nothing, just be careful, okay? He left before she could respond. Something in his tone bothered her. Something that felt like goodbye. Wolf found her 10 minutes later. The old SEAL looked tired. The kind of tired that came from carrying his secrets. Kid, got a minute? They walked to the edge of the base where the barriers gave way to open desert. The sun was setting, painting the sand in shades of orange and red and gold. Beautiful, Wolf said. Never gets old. You didn't come out here to talk about the Sunset Chief. No. He pulled out a photograph, worn, creased, the kind you keep in a wallet for decades. It showed a younger Wolf, maybe 25, standing in a desert with an older man, both in camouflage, both armed. The older man was Garrett Ashford. You knew him? She tried to keep the surprise out of her voice. Colonel Garrett Ashford was my SEER instructor in 1991. I was 25. Thought I was hot shit. Thought I knew everything about desert survival because I'd done a rotation in Iraq. He smiled at the memory. Your grandpa took me and 5 other team guys into the Iraqi desert during the ground war. No food, no water, just knives and ponchos. Told us to survive a week while completing a classified mission. Said if we made it, we'd learn something. If we didn't, we'd learn even more. How many made it? All of us, eventually. But your grandpa made us earn it. He taught us techniques that I'd never seen in any official manual. Things he'd learned from Korean War pilots. Things that worked when all the high-speed gear failed. He looked at Kira. Your grandfather told me something that week. Said his granddaughter was special. Said she had the gift. The ability to think like terrain. To become invisible. To survive when others quit. He said you'd be coming to the teams. Made me promise to watch your back when you did. Kira felt something catch in her throat. Grandpa died 4 years ago. I know, and I've been keeping my promise ever since you showed up. Wolf's expression hardened. This mission tonight, something feels wrong, too clean, too easy. You think it's a trap? I think nothing is ever as simple as it looks in a briefing. He handed her the photograph. Keep this. Remember what he taught you. If things go sideways out there, you forget the tech. You forget the plan, you go back to basics, the old ways, your grandfather's ways. He started to walk away, stopped, turned back. One more thing. Mallory's been acting strange, checking some kind of device that's not standard issue. I asked him about it. He said it was personal, but I don't like it. You think he's compromised? I think we live in a world where good men get forced into bad choices. Family threats, blackmail. The enemy's gotten smarter about that. Wolf's jaw tightened. If something happens to him out there, know that it probably wasn't his choice. And if something happens to you, know that I'll burn the whole desert down to get you back. He walked away, leaving Kira alone with the photograph and a growing sense of dread. They loaded into 3 Humvees at 0200 hours. Darkness, absolute. The kind you only get in the desert far from city lights. Kira rode in the second vehicle with Wolf and Mallory, weapons ready, night vision turning the landscape into shades of green and black. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions. Sand, rock, scattered vegetation that looked dead even in the best conditions. Command says air support is on standby, Wolfie informed them over the vehicle's intercom. Apaches at the border, ready to move if we need them. But they're not crossing into hostile territory unless we're in serious trouble, politically sensitive apparently. Politics, Mallory muttered from the turret. Always politics. We're the ones getting shot at, but politicians in safe offices get to decide what support we get. Kira watched Mallory in the green glow of night vision. He was tense, more than usual. His hand kept drifting to his vest, to a pouch that didn't hold standard equipment. Wolf caught her looking, gave a slight shake of his head. Not now. Whatever Mallory was carrying, whatever was happening, Wolf knew about it. And that meant it was part of something bigger, something they couldn't talk about on an open channel. They reached the target compound at 0430, an hour before dawn. The structure was exactly where intelligence said it would be. Fortified. Guard towers. Walls topped with razor wire. Through thermal optics, Kira could see heat signatures of sentries patrolling the perimeter. Professional security, not militia. That should have been the first warning. The assault went perfectly for the first 5 minutes. They breached the wall with shaped charges, moved through the compound and practiced silence, suppressed weapons, dropping sentries before they could raise the alarm. Hayes' team found the target in an upstairs bedroom, half asleep when they zip-tied his hands and began moving him toward extraction. That's when everything went wrong. The alarm sounded. Someone had found a dead guard faster than expected. Lights blazed throughout the compound. Automatic weapons fire erupted from multiple positions. What should have been a quiet extraction became a running gun battle as the SEAL team fought their way back to the vehicles. Move, move, Hayes ordered. Get to the trucks. They made it under heavy fire, but now the entire village was waking up. And worse, they could hear engines in the distance. Enemy reinforcements responding to the alarm. Hayes made the call every commander dreads. They had to leave immediately or risk the entire team being overwhelmed. The 3 Humvees roared away from the compound, racing through narrow streets while bullets sparked off their armor. They made it to the desert outskirts, accelerating toward friendly territory, thinking they'd pulled off a successful if messy extraction. That's when the ambush hit. Enemy forces had set up a blocking position along their escape route. Technical vehicles with mounted machine guns, RPG teams in elevated positions, a well-planned trap designed to catch them in a kill zone. The lead Humvee took an RPG hit, spinning out but still mobile. The third vehicle's gunner was hit, slumping in his turret. Kira's vehicle swerved to avoid incoming fire. That's when the IED detonated. The blast lifted the entire Humvee off the ground, flipping it through the air like a toy. Kira had a moment of weightless confusion. Mallory shouting something, Wolf grabbing for the oh shit handle. Then physics reasserted itself. The vehicle slammed into a wadi, rolling 3 times before coming to rest on its side. Her head hit something solid. The turret mount maybe, or the armored door. Stars exploded across her vision. Her ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out all other sound. She couldn't tell which way was up. Couldn't remember where she was. Training took over. Even dazed and disoriented muscle memory guided her actions. Check for injuries. She could move all her limbs. Nothing felt broken. Find your weapon. Her M4 was still attached to its sling across her chest. Orient yourself. The vehicle was on its side. She needed to get out before something caught fire. She kicked out the already shattered window, pulled herself from the wreckage, emerging into chaos. The other 2 Humvees were nowhere to be seen. Either they'd made it past the ambush or they'd been destroyed. Smoke and dust obscured everything beyond 50 feet, and she could hear engines. Close. getting closer. Her radio was crushed, smashed between her body and the vehicle's interior during the crash. Her camelback had ruptured, 3 liters of water already soaking into the sand beneath her feet. She had her M4, 4 magazines, a knife, a small first aid kit, and no way to call for help. The enemy was coming. Kira didn't panic. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. Instead, she did what SEAL training had drilled into her through hundreds of hours of scenarios. Assess, adapt, act. Her situation was bad, but not hopeless. She was injured but mobile, armed but low on ammunition, isolated but not helpless. She needed to evade immediately. The enemy would converge on the crash site within minutes, expecting to find dead or wounded Americans. She needed to be gone before they arrived, leaving no obvious trail, buying herself time to think and plan. She moved away from the wreckage, staying low, using the terrain for concealment. The desert here was more than just flat sand. There were ravines, rock formations, scattered vegetation that could provide cover if you knew how to use it. And Kira knew, her childhood in Arizona desert country, combined with SEAL survival training, combined with her grandfather's lessons, had taught her how to move through this environment like a ghost. She heard vehicles arriving at the crash site behind her, shouts in a language she didn't speak but understood the tone of. Excited, aggressive, hunting. They'd found the Humvee, were searching for survivors. She kept moving, putting distance between herself and the enemy, her mind already working through the tactical problems she faced. No water, that was the most immediate threat. In this heat already approaching 100 degrees even before noon, she'd be in serious trouble within hours without hydration. No communications. She couldn't call for help. Couldn't let anyone know she was alive and needed extraction. Her team would assume she was dead or captured. Standard protocol said they'd request satellite imagery to confirm. Might send a recovery team if they could confirm her status. But that would take time. She might not have time. Limited ammunition. 120 rounds might sound like a lot. But in sustained combat against superior numbers, she could burn through that in minutes. Every shot had to count. Every engagement had to be on her terms. But she had advantages too. She was a SEAL, trained in escape and evasion. She understood desert survival. She could move through this terrain better than the enemy forces hunting her. And most importantly, they had no idea who they were dealing with. They thought they were tracking a desperate, isolated American. Easy prey. They didn't know she was a predator too. The first priority was water. Without it, everything else was pointless. Kira oriented herself using the sun position and her memory of the map she'd studied before the mission. There should be a dry stream bed about 3 kilometers northeast, dry on the surface. But desert stream beds often had water if you knew where to dig. Grandpa Garrett had taught her that in Arizona 14 years ago. Find where the vegetation is slightly greener, where the sand is slightly darker. That's where moisture still exists underground. Dig 3 feet down, wait for seepage, filter it, drink it, live. She moved toward the wadi, using every bit of cover the terrain provided, stopping frequently to listen and observe. Behind her, she could hear vehicles spreading out, the enemy organizing a search pattern. They were noisy, undisciplined, overconfident. That would work in her favor. It took her 3 hours to cover 3 kilometers, moving slowly, carefully, conserving energy in the brutal heat. By the time she reached the stream bed, her mouth was cotton dry, her head pounding, her vision starting to blur at the edges. Heat exhaustion was setting in faster than she'd expected. The crash had taken more out of her than she'd realized. The stream bed looked completely dry, but Kira knew better. She found a spot where the sand looked slightly darker, slightly more compacted, indicating moisture beneath the surface. Using her knife and bare hands, she dug down about 3 feet. Water began seeping into the hole. Brackish, muddy, but water. She used her shamag, the tactical scarf every desert operator carried, to filter the worst sediment, then drank carefully, letting her body absorb the moisture slowly rather than gulping it down. It tasted terrible, but it was life. She filled her empty camelback, added purification tablets from her first aid kit, then covered the hole to hide evidence of her presence. Water secured. Next priority, evade pursuit until nightfall, then reassess. She heard engines approaching. The search parties were expanding their pattern, getting closer. Kira moved up out of the stream bed onto higher ground where she could observe without being seen. Through the heat shimmer, she counted 6 vehicles spread out in a loose search line, moving slowly across the desert, stopping periodically to check likely hiding spots. They were systematic, professional, not the undisciplined militia she'd hoped for. These were trained soldiers who knew what they were doing. That made things harder, but also more interesting. As the day wore on, the heat became a physical opponent. By early afternoon, the temperature had climbed past 115 degrees. Most people would have been incapacitated. Kira had trained for this. Countless hours in desert survival courses, learning to function in conditions that would kill unprepared personnel. She found shade where possible, minimized movement during the hottest hours, stayed hydrated with the water she'd secured, and she watched her pursuers make mistakes. The enemy soldiers were suffering in the heat, taking shortcuts in their search pattern, missing obvious hiding spots because they were focused on getting out of the sun. Their discipline was degrading as the day progressed. By late afternoon, some vehicles had given up active searching, were parked in what little shade they could find, their crews waiting for cooler evening temperatures. That gave Kira an opportunity. One vehicle had parked about 800 meters from her position, its crew sitting in the shade of the truck, drinking water. Clearly exhausted from hours of searching in the brutal heat, they'd gotten careless, putting down their weapons, focusing on their own discomfort rather than maintaining vigilance. Kira studied them through her rifle scope, counting personnel, noting their weapons and equipment: 4 soldiers, AK pattern rifles, 1 radio, vehicle-mounted machine gun. She could take them, ambush the position, secure their vehicle and supplies, maybe even their radio. It would be high risk, but it would also give her resources and mobility she desperately needed. She spent an hour planning the approach, studying every bit of terrain between her position and theirs, plotting her route to minimize exposure, identifying fallback positions if things went wrong. This was what made SEALs different from regular soldiers: the ability to slow down, think tactically, plan every detail before committing to action. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Kira moved. She covered the 800 meters in 30 minutes, using every bit of cover available, moving when their attention was elsewhere, freezing when they looked her direction. By the time she was in position, 200 meters from their vehicle, they still had no idea she was there. She settled behind a rock outcropping, steadied her M4 on the natural rest, controlled her breathing. 4 targets. She'd need to take them down before they could respond, before they could radio for help, before they could return effective fire. It would require precision shooting under combat stress. Exactly what she'd trained for thousands of times. Target priority, radio operator first, the one with the antenna on his vest. Then the soldier closest to the vehicle-mounted machine gun. Then the other 2. Fast, efficient, decisive. Kira's finger found the trigger. She exhaled slowly, letting her natural respiratory pause settle her aim. Then she squeezed. The M4 cracked 4 times in rapid succession. Controlled pairs, center mass, exactly as trained. On all 4, enemy soldiers dropped before any of them could react. The entire engagement lasted less than 3 seconds. She waited, weapon trained on the vehicle, watching for movement, ready to engage again if needed. Nothing, and all 4 targets down. She approached cautiously, weapon up, checking each body to confirm they were no longer threats. She felt nothing, no guilt, no remorse, just the professional detachment that allowed operators to do what needed to be done. These soldiers had been hunting her, would have captured or killed her given the chance. This was survival, pure and simple. The vehicle yielded a treasure trove of supplies. Water, 4 liters in canteens, food, MRE equivalents, ammunition, AK rounds that wouldn't fit her M4 but still useful for understanding enemy loadout, maps showing the enemy's search pattern, and most valuable, a radio. It was on a different frequency than her team's equipment, but it was communication. And communication meant she could potentially call for extraction. Then she found something else in the personal effects of one soldier: a smartphone, cracked screen, low battery, but functional. She powered it on, found photos, recent photos. One made her blood run cold. It showed Owen Mallory, her teammate, meeting with an unknown contact 3 days before the mission. The photo was dated, time-stamped, geotagged. Mallory had met with someone who wasn't American, someone who looked like the soldier she'd just killed. She scrolled through more photos, found text messages, partially deleted but still recoverable. Her Arabic was limited, but she recognized keywords: American, female, SEAL, Watchford. They knew her name, knew her family name. This wasn't random. Then she found the voice message. Listened to it with growing horror. The voice spoke English, accented, professional. Confirm, American female operator Ashford, bloodline protocol, proceed with evaluation as briefed. Colonel Volkov en route with specialist team. Ashford bloodline priority target. They knew her grandfather, knew her family. The ambush wasn't about the mission, it was about her. Kira looked at Mallory's photo again. He'd known. Somehow he'd known this was coming. That's why he had acted strange before the mission. That's why he'd said goodbye. She keyed the enemy radio, listened to the frequencies. Static, chatter, nothing useful yet. Then a new voice, clear, calm, speaking English. Attention American operator. I am Colonel Dmitry Volkov, formerly Soviet Spetsnaz, Afghanistan veteran. I commanded search operations against your Delta Force in Tora Bora. I know how you think. I know your grandfather's techniques. I've fought men he trained. A pause. This game ends tomorrow. Run or fight, the choice is yours. But know that I respect your skill, and I will find you. The radio went silent. Kira stared at it for a long moment. Then she keyed the transmit button. Colonel Volkov, Staff Sergeant Kira Ashford, U.S. Navy SEALs. You want to hunt in Ashford? Let's make it interesting. Come find me. She released the button, grabbed the supplies she could carry, left everything else. Then she disappeared into the desert. 4 enemy soldiers dead, 16 rounds expended, 104 remaining, water for 2 days, food for 3, and a hunter who knew her grandfather's tactics coming after her. The sun was setting, painting the desert in blood red and gold. Somewhere in the distance, she heard helicopters. American. Too far away to signal, too far away to help. But they were looking. That meant her team had reported her missing. That meant someone was trying to find her. She just had to survive long enough to be found. Kira looked at the smartphone one more time, at Mallory's photo. Trust no one, Grandpa Garrett had said in denied territory. Trust your training, trust your gut, trust nothing else. Mallory had been compromised. That much was clear. But had he been a traitor or had someone forced him? And Wolf known too many questions, not enough answers. What she knew for certain, this mission had been compromised from the start. Someone had wanted her isolated, alone, vulnerable. They'd gotten their wish. Now she'd make them regret it. Hour 6 of isolation. The water hole had saved her life. But water alone wouldn't keep her alive. She crouched in the shadow of a rock formation, watching the enemy's search pattern evolve. 6 vehicles had become 8. The professionals were calling in reinforcements. They'd found her Humvee, found the bodies of the 4 soldiers she'd killed. Now they knew they weren't hunting a desperate survivor. They were hunting a killer. The sun climbed higher, temperature pushing past 110, 115, the kind of heat that made steel too hot to touch, the kind that cooked the air itself. Most soldiers would have sought shelter, waited for evening. Kira moved, because Grandpa Garrett had taught her something the enemy didn't know, a technique from 1951 Korea, when American pilots got shot down over the north and had to survive in hostile mountains with winter cold that killed as fast as desert heat. Move during the worst conditions, when the enemy thinks no one can operate. That's when you're safest. That's when they're not looking. She paralleled the search line, staying 400 meters out, using the heat shimmer as concealment. The distortion made visual acquisition nearly impossible beyond 200 meters. Technology would help them. Thermal imaging, drones. But thermal worked both ways. She'd taken the poncho liner from her pack, covered herself during movement. The material disrupted her heat signature just enough, made her blend with the sun-scorched rocks. Old school, low-tech, exactly what Grandpa Garrett would have done. The enemy vehicles passed within 300 meters. Never saw her. She smiled despite the heat, despite the danger. Thank you, Grandpa. Still teaching me, even now. By noon, she'd circled behind the search line, found what she was looking for, a supply vehicle, parked in the shade of an outcropping. 2 soldiers guarding it, but guarding it poorly. They sat in the shade, drinking water, smoking cigarettes, weapons propped against the truck. Complacent, tired, human. Kira settled into a shooting position 300 meters out. Elevated ground, solid rest. The M4 wasn't a precision rifle, but at 300 meters with quality ammunition and a good shooter, it was plenty accurate. She controlled her breathing, let her heart rate settle, waited for the wind to still. Both targets were stationary, unaware. Perfect. She squeezed the trigger twice. 2 shots, 2 seconds apart, 2 bodies dropping. The sound reached them before the bullets did. They never knew what hit them. She waited 5 minutes, watching for response, for backup, for any sign the shots had been heard. Nothing. The desert swallowed sound, especially suppressed fire from distance. She approached the vehicle, cleared it, confirmed both targets were down. The truck held more than supplies. It held intelligence, maps, detailed, showing not just the search pattern, but enemy positions for 50 kilometers in every direction. Communication logs, radio frequencies, call signs, and something else. A laptop, military grade, powered on, screen showing an email client. Most of it was in Arabic, but some messages were in English. One caught her attention immediately. Subject line Ashford evaluation. She opened it, read it twice to make sure she understood. Colonel Volkov, subject has eliminated 6 hostiles in first 12 hours. Demonstrates advanced fieldcraft and tactical awareness consistent with Ashford family training. Grandfather's techniques evident in water procurement, thermal evasion, and target selection. Recommend proceeding to Phase 2 direct engagement. Subject must demonstrate combat effectiveness against peer opponents before recruitment consideration. Network command authorizes capture alive if possible. Termination only if capture not feasible. Confirm Mallory asset is prepared for sacrifice play per original protocol. Recruitment. Phase 2. Mallory asset prepared for sacrifice. This wasn't just revenge for her grandfather's Gulf War operation. They were testing her, evaluating her. For what? She scrolled through more emails, found fragments, references to something called the network. Post-Soviet intelligence apparatus. Still operating, still active. Recruiting Western operators who'd been burned by their own governments. Another email mentioned her grandfather specifically. Colonel Ashford eliminated network leadership element in 1991. 6 GRU specialists neutralized. But Ashford refused recruitment offer before engagement. Demonstrated loyalty to U.S. despite mistreatment post-Desert Storm. Granddaughter may prove more pragmatic given current U.S. military climate regarding female operators. Kira stared at the screen. They'd tried to recruit Grandpa Garrett. He'd refused, so they'd tried to kill him. Now they were trying again. With her and Mallory. Owen Mallory, her teammate, her friend. He was an asset, being prepared for sacrifice. She thought about his strange behavior before the mission. His goodbye, that wasn't goodbye, he'd known. Somehow Mallory knew he was compromised, knew he was being used, and he'd gone on the mission anyway. Why she copied the emails to a thumb drive from her kit, shut down the laptop, loaded the vehicle with everything useful. Water. 10 liters now. Food. Enough for a week. Ammunition. Still couldn't use the AK rounds, but she took them anyway. Denial of resources to the enemy. Medical supplies, fresh bandages, antibiotics, pain medication, and the radio. Another one. This time with encryption capability. She set charges on the vehicle. Timed fuses. 30 minutes, then she moved. 800 meters away. She stopped. Watched the truck explode. Secondary detonations as ammunition cooked off. The blast would draw every enemy unit within 4 kilometers. They'd find 2 dead soldiers, a destroyed supply vehicle, no trail leading away. Like a ghost had struck and vanished. Exactly the reputation she wanted to build. Because psychological warfare was 90% of desert combat. Grandpa Garrett had taught her that too, along with everything else. The sun descended, temperature finally dropping below 100 degrees. Kira had found shelter in a cave system, natural formations carved by ancient water flow. Cool, concealed, defensible. She checked it thoroughly before settling in. No snakes, no scorpions, no previous inhabitants, just rock and shadow and blessed coolness after the brutal heat. She drank water, ate an MRE, tended her injuries. The crash had left her with cracked ribs, deep bruising across her left side, minor lacerations from broken glass. Nothing that would kill her, but enough to slow her down, enough to hurt. She wrapped her ribs with an elastic bandage from the first aid kit, took ibuprofen for the pain and inflammation. Then she settled in to monitor the radio. The enemy frequency crackled with activity. Angry, confused, frightened. They'd found the supply vehicle, found the bodies. Now they were reporting to someone who responded in English. That voice, calm, professional, dangerous. Colonel Volkov. Understood. 8 confirmed KIA in 18 hours. Subject demonstrates operational capability exceeding initial assessment. Request permission to deploy specialist team. The response came from a different voice, older. Authority. Permission granted. But Colonel, remember the objective. We want Ashford alive. She's worth more to us as an asset than a corpse. Volkov's response was measured. Understood, Osman. But she's her grandfather's student. Garrett Ashford nearly killed me in '91. I won't underestimate his bloodline. Then Volkov switched to the open channel, speaking English, knowing she was listening. Attention, American operator. I know you're monitoring this frequency. I know you've heard the truth now. We don't want to kill you, Kiram. We want to offer you what we offered your grandfather 33 years ago. A pause, then he continued. Your grandfather was magnificent. February 1991. He infiltrated our position with a four-man team, eliminated 6 Soviet advisors coordinating Iraqi chemical weapons deployment. I was the 7th. He put a round through my shoulder. Could have killed me. Should have killed me. But he didn't. He pulled me from a burning building. Gave me first aid. Then he said something I've never forgotten. Volkov's voice carried weight. Memory. He said, Colonel, we're enemies by circumstance, not by choice. Soldiers can still choose honor. Then he offered me recruitment. Said the network would value my skills. Good pay. No political oversight. Just professional work for professional soldiers. I asked why he thought I'd betray my country. He said, because your country will betray you first. They already have. We both know it. Another pause. Your grandfather was right. The Soviet Union collapsed 6 months later. My government abandoned us, left us without pensions, without support. The network kept its promises, gave us purpose. Your grandfather refused the same offer, stayed loyal to America. And how did America reward him? Classified his Gulf War service, denied him medals, buried his accomplishments. Now it's your turn, Kira. You've proven yourself these last 18 hours. 8 kills, 0 casualties. Operational excellence under impossible conditions. We can offer you what your country won't. Recognition, resources, freedom to operate without politicians second-guessing every decision. Or you can refuse like your grandfather. And we will hunt you, kill you, bury you in this desert. Your choice. You have until dawn. The radio went silent. Kira sat in the darkness of the cave, processing what she'd heard. Volkov knew Grandpa Garrett, had fought him, had been spared by him. Now he was offering her the same recruitment pitch and threatening her life if she refused. She thought about her grandfather, about the photo Wolf had shown her, about the missing face cut from the image. That had been Volkov, the one who escaped, the one who'd carried a grudge for 33 years. She checked the smartphone she'd taken from the earlier kill. Still had battery, 10%. Scrolled through Mallory's photos again, found something she'd missed before, a video file, dated 2 days before the mission. She played it, volume low. Mallory's face filled the screen. He looked tired, scared. His voice was barely a whisper. Kira, if you're watching this, it means things went bad. Means I'm probably dead or captured. I need you to know the truth. He glanced off camera, like someone might be listening. 6 months ago, they approached me, showed me photos of my sister, my nephews, said if I didn't cooperate, my family would disappear. I didn't have a choice. They made me carry a tracker in my gear, made me report on team movements, made me compromise the mission. But I told Wolf 2 months ago, we went to Hayes. She contacted ONI, Naval Intelligence. They said use it, run a counter operation, draw out the network. Mallory's eyes were wet, but his voice stayed steady. This whole mission was bait, Kira. The HVT was real. But the primary objective was you, drawing out Volkov, make him commit forces, get evidence of network operations. You're not bait because you're expendable. You're bait because you're the best. Because Wolf said if anyone could survive alone in hostile territory while we positioned assets for extraction, it's you, your grandfather's student, the one who learned the old ways. I volunteered to be the sacrificial piece, the one they'd focus on if they captured someone. Wolf wanted to take my place, but I said no. I got my family into this. I get them out. He wiped his eyes. If you survive, tell my sister I'm sorry. Tell her I died doing something that mattered. And Kira, trust Wolf. He knows everything. He's been hunting this network since '91, since they tried to kill your grandfather. This is bigger than one mission, bigger than one team. Your grandfather started a war against these people. Wolf continued it. Now it's your turn to finish it. Stay alive, complete the mission, and make these bastards pay for what they did to good soldiers like your grandfather. Like Wolf. Like Mihamam. The video ended. Kira sat in the darkness. Mallory had known, had volunteered, had sacrificed himself to protect her, to protect the mission, and Wolf. Master Chief Brennan Wolf, the grizzled veteran who'd watched her back since day one. He'd been hunting the network for decades. This whole operation had been a trap, but not for her, for them. She was the bait, but bait with teeth. The phone battery died, screen going dark. But Kira had what she needed, the truth. Mallory was a hero, not a traitor. Wolf was playing a long game, decades long, and she was the key piece on the board. Time to prove Wolf's faith was justified. Hour 30 of isolation. And Kira Ashford was done running. It was time to hunt. Hour 18. The night belonged to ghosts. Kira moved through the darkness like her grandfather had taught her, like the Korean war pilots had taught him, like warriors had moved through hostile territory for 1,000 years before satellites and thermal imaging and all the technology that promised safety but delivered only false confidence. The enemy patrol base sat 4 kilometers from her cave shelter. She'd identified it through stolen maps and radio intercepts. 12 soldiers, 4 vehicles. Command and control node for the entire search operation. They thought the night would protect them, thought she'd hunker down, wait for rescue, play defense. They didn't understand the Ashford way. When you're outnumbered, you don't defend, you attack. You make the enemy react to you. You control the tempo. She'd spent 3 hours on the approach. Slow, crawling through rock fields, avoiding thermals by staying in naturally cool microterrain, moving only when wind-covered sound. Grandpa Garrett called it ghost walking, a Soviet Spetsnaz technique he'd learned from captured enemy operators in Afghanistan. Intelligence officers had spent months debriefing those prisoners, extracting every tactical innovation the Russians had developed in their own brutal war. Move like water, he'd told her. Flow around obstacles, leave no trace. Become part of the terrain itself. By midnight, she was in position, 200 meters from the patrol base, elevated. Good fields of fire. She counted sentries. 3 of them, spaced 30 meters apart. Professional spacing. But humans got tired, attention wandered. Even professionals made mistakes in the deep hours of night when the body craved sleep. She took the farthest sentry first. Single suppressed right shot at 180 meters. Headshot. He dropped without a sound. Waited 5 minutes. No alarm. Second sentry, 200 meters. Same result. Third sentry started to turn. Had maybe sensed something wrong, the way animals sense predators before they see them. She put 2 rounds center mass. He went down hard. Still no alarm. The suppressor and distance were working. The other soldiers heard nothing over the generator, hum in their own conversation. Now for the real show. She'd taken enemy grenades from the supply vehicle earlier. Fragmentation. Offensive pattern. She tied 3 together, created a makeshift satchel charge, set a timer, 60 seconds, lobbed it toward the fuel storage, then settled behind her rifle and waited. The explosion turned night into day, fuel detonating. Secondary explosions as ammunition cooked off, vehicles burning, soldiers running, chaos. Kira engaged targets of opportunity, commanders trying to restore order, radio operators trying to call for help, anyone who looked like they knew what they were doing. Methodical, calm, professional. 10 shots, 6 kills, 4 wounded. Then she displaced, moving to a secondary position 400 meters away. Behind her, the patrol base burned, voices screaming in the darkness, trying to understand what happened, who hit them, where the attack came from. They'd find 3 dead sentries, 6 more casualties from the firefight, a destroyed command post, and no evidence of who'd done it, just the ghost. She monitored their radio frequency as she moved away. Panic, confusion, fear. One voice kept repeating the same phrase in broken English. The Ashford woman. It has to be the Ashford woman. She's everywhere. How is she everywhere? Kira smiled in the darkness. Psychological warfare. The most effective weapon in the desert. Make them see ghosts. Make them afraid of shadows. Make them hunt phantoms while you hunt them. Grandpa Garrett had understood that better than anyone. Technology gives you information he'd told her during training. But fear makes the enemy make mistakes, and mistakes get them killed. She put 5 more kilometers between herself and the burning patrol base before finding shelter in a narrow ravine, the kind of terrain that defeated thermal imaging because the rock held residual heat that masked human signatures. Dawn was 2 hours away, She'd rest until then, conserve energy, plan her next move. But first, she needed to understand something. She pulled out the thumb drive with the stolen emails. The laptop was gone, destroyed with the supply vehicle. But she'd read enough to know the basics. The network, post-Soviet intelligence remnants, still operational 3 decades after the USSR collapsed. Recruiting burned operators from Western militaries, offering them what their governments wouldn't: money, resources, freedom from oversight. And they tried to recruit Grandpa Garrett in 1991. She closed her eyes, let herself drift back to another memory, another lesson. Summer 2015. She was 18 years old, a month before leaving for Navy basic training. Grandpa Garrett sat with her on the porch of his Arizona ranch house. The desert stretched endlessly before them, stars blazing overhead in the clear desert sky. "Kira," he said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you before you go. Something I've never told anyone except Brennan Wolf." She waited, knowing when her grandfather got that tone you listened. February 1991, Operation Desert Saber, the ground war. My team was tasked with eliminating Soviet advisors helping Iraq develop chemical weapons. 6 GRU officers, deep in enemy territory, classified mission. The kind that never makes it into history books. He pulled out photographs, the ones she'd seen before. Desert camouflage. Hard men with harder eyes, the cutout face. We infiltrated their command post at night, killed 5 in the first 30 seconds. The 6th Colonel Dmitry Volkov was in a back room, coordinating artillery strikes for Iraqi forces. I put my weapon on him. He knew he was dead. Garrett's voice went distant, remembering. But something stopped me. He wasn't afraid, wasn't begging. He just looked at me and said, "Make it clean, American. Soldiers deserve that much." I realized in that moment we weren't really enemies. We were soldiers doing our jobs, following orders from politicians who'd never see combat. He was a good man in a bad war, just like me. So I made him an offer. The network, that's what they called themselves even then, was recruiting talented operators, offering them a chance to work outside political constraints. I'd been approached months earlier, refused. But I saw an opportunity. I told Volkov, "Colonel, your government is going to abandon you. The Soviet Union is collapsing. You'll be left with nothing. But I can offer you something better. Come work for us, for America. Feed us intelligence on Russian operations. Get paid, get protected, get valued." Kira remembered her 18-year-old self sitting there stunned. What did he say? He refused, called it treason, said he'd die before betraying his country. So I pulled him out of the building before the airstrike hit, gave him first aid, let him go. Why? Because warriors can choose honor over hate. Because I wanted him to remember that Americans offered mercy when his own people would abandon him. Because I knew the Soviet Union was dying, and men like Volkov would need to make a choice about what kind of men they'd become. Garrett looked at her hard. 6 months later, USSR collapsed. Volkov tried to contact me through back channels, wanted to accept my offer, work for American intelligence. But the network found out, sent assassins. Did they get you? They tried. 1997, car bomb, I survived, went underground for a while. Eventually they stopped trying, or so I thought. He paused. The desert wind whispered through sagebrush. "Kira, I'm telling you this because you're going into the military, into the teams if you're as good as I think you are. And someday someone might approach you, offer you things your country won't. Money, recognition, freedom. And when that day comes, I want you to remember this loyalty isn't about getting rewarded. It's about doing what's right even when it costs you everything. Even when your country doesn't appreciate it. Even when no one knows your name. That's what separates warriors from mercenaries. That's what makes you an Ashford." She remembered nodding, not fully understanding. She was 18. Invincible. The world was simple. Now 7 years later, in a hostile desert with an enemy battalion hunting her, she understood perfectly. The memory faded. Kira was back in the ravine. Dawn approaching. Volkov had tried to flip to American intelligence in 97. The network had sent assassins after Grandpa Garrett because of it. And now, 27 years later, Volkov was hunting her. But the question was why? Revenge or something else? The radio crackled. Volkov's voice, speaking English, knowing she was listening. "Impressive work. Staff Sergeant Ashford, the patrol base, very impressive. Textbook Ashford family tactics. Your grandfather used almost identical methodology at Basra in 91. Satchel charge on fuel storage. Precision targeting of command elements. Psychological impact maximized. A pause. You're his blood, all right. His skill, his creativity, his absolute refusal to accept defeat. Another pause. Then his voice changed, became almost sad. But you should know something about that night in 1991. Something your grandfather probably never told you. When he offered me recruitment to American intelligence, I wanted to accept. Right then, but I was too proud, too committed to the Soviet ideal. 6 years later, when I finally tried to flip the network, found out. They sent a team to kill everyone I'd contacted, including your grandfather. He survived, but others didn't. 3 CIA officers died because of my weakness, because I waited too long to make the right choice. Kira's hand tightened on the radio. This was new information. Grandpa Garrett had mentioned the assassination attempt, but not that others had died. Volkov continued, I've carried that guilt for 27 years. Every day, every mission, knowing that good men died because I was too proud to accept help when it was offered. Knowing that Garrett Ashford showed me mercy, and I repaid it with blood. And now the network has ordered me to hunt his granddaughter, to test you, evaluate you, recruit you, or kill you. So here is the truth, Kira Ashford. I'm not hunting you for revenge. I'm hunting you because it's the only way to save your life. The radio went silent. Kira stared at it, processing. She keyed the transmit button. Colonel Volkov, if you wanted to save my life, you could have warned me before the mission. Could have told Oni about the compromise. Could have done 100 things that didn't involve killing my teammate and leaving me to die in the desert. She released the button, waited. Volkov's response came quickly. You're right, but the network watches everything. Everyone. If I'd warned you directly, they'd have killed your entire team. Killed me. Killed my remaining family in Russia. The only way to save anyone was to play along. Make them think I was loyal. Make them commit resources to this operation. And then hope, pray that you were as good as your grandfather, that you could survive long enough for the trap to spring. What trap? The one Wolf has been setting for 30 years. The one your teammate Mallory died to enable. The one that requires you to stay alive and keep killing my soldiers until every piece is in position. Kira's mind raced. Mallory's video had said Oni was running a counter-operation, that she was bait to draw out the network. But if Volkov was telling the truth, he was part of the trap too. A triple agent, still playing the long game Grandpa Garrett had started in 91. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. Trust is earned, so let me earn it. At 0900 hours, a network convoy will move through grid coordinates November Victor 7328. 3 vehicles, 12 soldiers, carrying encrypted communications equipment and 48 hours of operational intelligence. Hit them, take the equipment. You'll find evidence that confirms everything I've told you, and you'll find something else. Proof that the network has been planning a major operation inside the United States. Proof that will justify the resources Oni has committed to this mission. That's my good faith offering. Take it or don't. But know this, every hour you survive, every soldier you kill, every piece of network infrastructure you destroy, it's all weakening them, making them commit forces, making them expose themselves. Your grandfather started a war in 1991. Wolf continued it. You're finishing it, whether you know it or not. The radio went silent again. Kira checked her watch. 0900 was 6 hours away. Grid coordinates November Victor 7328 was approximately 15 kilometers northeast of her current position. She could make it, if she moved now, if she used the remaining darkness for concealment. But was it a trap? Volkov could be lying, leading her into an ambush. The convoy could be bait, waiting for her to commit forces she couldn't afford to lose. On the other hand, the intel on the thumb drive had confirmed the network was real, that they'd tried to recruit Grandpa Garrett, that they were testing her now. And Mallory's video had confirmed Oni was running a counter-operation, using her as bait to expose the network. If Volkov was really a triple agent, feeding her actionable intelligence made sense. It would help Oni's mission. It would give her resources she needed, and it would further establish his credibility. But if he was lying, she'd be walking into a kill box. She thought about what Grandpa Garrett would do. He'd always said, when you can't know the truth, create conditions where the truth reveals itself. Force your enemy to commit, then adapt based on what they do. Decision made. She'd hit the convoy, but on her terms, not Volkov's. She'd arrive early, scout the approach, identify escape routes, prepare backup positions, Classic ambush doctrine. If it was legitimate target, she'd take it. If it was a trap, she'd abort and relocate. Either way, she'd learned something about Volkov's intentions. She packed her gear, checked her ammunition, 94 rounds remaining after the patrol base attack. She needed to make this count. Started moving northeast, using the last hours of darkness for concealment, covering ground quickly but carefully, balancing speed against stealth. The terrain here was more varied. Rolling hills, scattered rock formations, dry wadis cutting through the landscape like scars. Good ambush country if you knew how to use it. And Kira knew. By 0730, she was in position overlooking the coordinates Volkov had provided. A narrow valley where the road squeezed between rocky outcroppings. Classic kill zone geography. She'd arrived 90 minutes early. Time to observe. Time to think. Time to prepare. The area was empty. No vehicles, no soldiers. No obvious signs of preparation. Either the convoy hadn't arrived yet, or Volkov's information was wrong. Or it was a trap and they were waiting for her to commit. She found an elevated position with good visibility and cover. Settled in, rifle ready, eyes scanning. The sun climbed, temperature rising. 0800, 0830. Nothing. At 0845, she heard engines coming from the north, right on schedule. 3 vehicles appeared, technical trucks with mounted weapons, exactly as Volkov had described, moving slowly, cautiously, professional interval spacing. No air cover, no drone overwatch that she could detect. Just 3 trucks and approximately 12 soldiers. Kira studied them through her rifle scope. Body language, weapon handling, formation discipline. These were good soldiers, alert, experienced, the kind who'd fight back hard if ambushed. But they were also exposed, channelized by terrain, moving through the exact kill zone she'd prepared. She had 2 options. Hit them now, quick ambush, grab what she could and run. Or wait, let them pass. See if anyone was following them. Confirm this wasn't bait. Grandpa Garrett's voice in her head, patience wins more battles than courage. Know when to strike and when to watch. She waited. The convoy passed through the kill zone, continued south, disappeared around a bend. No follow-up vehicles, no helicopter support, no reaction force waiting in reserve. Either it was legitimate or it was very sophisticated bait. Kira made her decision. She'd hit the convoy 3 kilometers down the road. Different location than Volkov expected. Her choice of terrain, her initiative. She moved parallel to the convoy's route, fast but careful, using terrain to mask her movement, getting ahead of them, finding another choke point. 20 minutes later, she was in position at a wadi crossing, the kind of natural bottleneck that forced vehicles to slow down. Navigate carefully. Perfect. She rigged the approach with the last of her improvised explosives. Not enough to destroy vehicles, but enough to disable them. Stop the convoy, force the soldiers to dismount, then she'd have them. At 0920, the convoy entered the wadi. Lead vehicle slowed, navigating the rocky descent. Kira triggered the charge. The explosion flipped the lead vehicle, blocked the exit. Trail vehicle braked hard. Soldiers started dismounting, taking defensive positions. She triggered the second charge. Entry blocked. Convoy trapped. Then she opened fire from 600 meters. Elevated position, sun behind her, creating glare that made target acquisition almost impossible for the soldiers below. Old school technique. Position yourself with the sun at your back. Natural advantage. No technology required. She targeted drivers first, disabled the remaining vehicles, then shifted to soldiers trying to return fire. They couldn't see her. The morning sun was blinding them. Their return fire was wild, undisciplined. She fired 20 rounds, took 11 targets, then displaced before they could coordinate a response. Behind her, the convoy burned, survivors calling for help, wounded screaming. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no remorse, just cold tactical calculation. This was war, and in war you did what was necessary to survive, to win, to complete the mission. She circled back after 30 minutes, made sure the area was secure, then moved in to collect intelligence. The vehicles were destroyed. Most of the soldiers dead. 3 wounded survivors who wouldn't be fighting anyone for months. She found what Volkov had promised. Encrypted communications equipment, laptop with recent operational logs, maps with network safe houses marked across 3 continents, and something else, a classified folder labeled Operation Homecoming. She opened it, read quickly, her blood running cold. The network was planning a major attack inside the United States. Details were vague, but the target was clear. A classified military research facility, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, where the Pentagon developed next-generation weapon systems. The attack was scheduled for 6 weeks from now. The goal still classified technology, kill American scientists, deliver both to the highest bidder. This was bigger than her, bigger than Volkov, bigger than revenge for Grandpa Garrett. This was a clear and present threat to national security. She photographed every page, copied every file to her thumb drive, took the laptop. Then she looked at the wounded survivors. They were watching her, fear in their eyes. She could kill them, eliminate witnesses, deny the enemy intelligence. Or she could show mercy, the way Grandpa Garrett had shown Volkov mercy in '91. She thought about what her grandfather had said. Warriors can choose honor over hate. She left them first aid kits, water, signaling equipment. Then she disappeared into the desert. Let them tell Volkov what happened. Let them spread the story of the American operator who could have killed them but chose mercy. Psychological warfare worked both ways. She moved 10 kilometers before stopping to rest, found shelter in a cave complex, uploaded the stolen files to an encrypted cloud backup using the laptop's satellite connection, sent a burst transmission to ONI frequencies with the coordinates and access codes. If she died out here, at least the intelligence would survive. Operation Homecoming would be stopped. Then she settled in to review what she'd captured. The operational logs revealed more than Volkov had promised. The network wasn't just a rogue intelligence apparatus, it was massive. Tentacles in 40 countries, assets in Western militaries, intelligence agencies, law enforcement, a shadow government that answered to no nation. Loyal only to profit and power, and they'd been hunting Grandpa Garrett for decades. Not just because he'd refused recruitment, but because he'd been actively working against them, feeding intelligence to CIA, compromising their operations, recruiting their assets. The assassination attempt in '97 hadn't been random. It had been retaliation for years of damage Garrett Ashford had inflicted on network operations worldwide. And now they wanted his granddaughter, either as an asset or as a corpse, to finally close the Ashford chapter. Kira closed the laptop, looked at her hands, covered in shrapnel and dried blood and calluses from years of training. Ashford hands, warrior hands. Grandpa Garrett had started a war he couldn't finish, had passed it to Wolf, and now it was hers. She thought about Mallory, Owen Mallory, who'd volunteered to be the sacrifice, who'd known he was compromised but went on the mission anyway, because some things mattered more than one life. She thought about Wolf, Brennan Wolf, who'd been hunting the network for 3 decades, who'd kept his promise to protect her even when she didn't know she needed protection. And she thought about Volkov, Dmitry Volkov, the enemy who might be an ally, the man who'd carried guilt for 27 years, who was maybe possibly trying to make things right. The radio crackled, Volkov's voice, different this time, urgent. Ashford, if you hit the convoy, if you took the intel, you need to listen very carefully. The network knows you have Operation Homecoming. They're authorizing a full-scale response. 60 soldiers, air support, everything they can commit without exposing themselves to satellite surveillance. They're coming for you, all of them, and they're not trying to capture you anymore. They're trying to erase you, make sure you and the intelligence both disappear. You have maybe 12 hours before they're in position. You need extraction now, not tomorrow, not next week. Now, Kira keyed the transmit. Why are you helping me? Volkov's voice was quiet, almost sad. Because 27 years ago, your grandfather gave me a choice. I made the wrong one, got good people killed, and I've been trying to fix it ever since. Because Garrett Ashford believed warriors could choose honor, even enemies, even when it costs everything. And because I'm tired of living with ghosts. The radio went silent. Kira sat in the cave, surrounded by stone and darkness and stolen secrets that could destroy the network. Grandpa Garrett's war, passed down, generation to generation. She checked her ammunition, 74 rounds remaining, not enough for 60 soldiers and air support. She checked her water, 1 liter left, not enough for a sustained firefight in this heat. She checked her options, limited, very limited, but she'd been in worse situations, during training, during Hell Week, during every hard evolution that separated those who quit from those who endured. And Ashford's didn't quit. She pulled out the signal mirror, Korean War vintage, the one Grandpa Garrett had carried, the one he'd given her, the one that had signaled rescue for pilots shot down over North Korea 7 decades ago. Technology fails, training endures, the warrior spirit endures. She stood, gathered her gear, started planning, 60 soldiers coming, air support, everything the network could commit. Good. Let them come. Let them learn what happened when you hunted in Ashford in the desert. Let them learn why the old ways still worked, why technology couldn't replace skill, why satellites and drones and thermal imaging meant nothing against a warrior who understood terrain and patience and the absolute refusal to surrender. Grandpa Garrett had taught her well. Wolf had prepared her perfectly, and Mallory had died to give her this chance. She wouldn't waste it. The sun was setting, painting the desert in blood red and gold. Kira moved toward high ground, found defensible terrain, rock formations that would break up attack formations, natural choke points that would force enemies into kill zones. She spent 4 hours preparing the battlefield, setting traps, identifying firing positions, planning retreat routes, creating a defense in depth that would maximize her advantages and minimize theirs. At midnight, she heard helicopters in the distance, coming closer. She settled into her primary firing position. Rifle ready, 74 rounds, make each one count. The helicopters passed overhead. Too high, too fast. But they'd be back, probably at dawn, when they had light, when thermal imaging would be most effective. She had maybe 6 hours. 6 hours to rest, 6 hours to think, 6 hours to remember everything Grandpa Garrett had taught her about surviving against impossible odds, and 6 hours to wonder if Volkov was telling the truth, if this was really about redemption, or if she was just another piece in a game she didn't fully understand. The radio crackled one more time. Volkov's voice, barely a whisper. Ashford, they're coming at dawn. 63 soldiers, 3 helicopters. Orders are to recover the intelligence and eliminate you. No witnesses, no survivors. But listen carefully. I've told them you're 15 kilometers south of your actual position. Gave them false coordinates. It'll buy you maybe 3 hours, maybe 4 if the terrain slows them down. Use that time. Get to extraction point Whiskey 7. It's a dry lake bed 30 kilometers northeast. Oni has a team waiting. Wolford is with them. They can't come to you too exposed. But if you can get there, they'll pull you out. This is my last transmission. After this, I'm dark. The network is watching everything. If they know I helped you, everyone I've tried to protect dies. Look, Garrett Ashford showed me mercy when I deserved death. This is me repaying that debt. Through his granddaughter, the only way I can. A long pause. Your grandfather was right about everything. Honor matters, even between enemies, especially between enemies. Finish this war, Kira Ashford. For him, for Wolf, for Mallory, for every warrior the network has betrayed. And if you survive, tell Wolf some soldiers can be redeemed, even after 27 years, even after everything. The radio went silent. This time Kira knew it was permanent. She looked at the stars, the same stars Grandpa Garrett had used to navigate in Iraq 33 years ago, the same stars Korean war pilots had followed home, the same stars that had guided warriors for thousands of years before GPS and satellites and all the technology that promised precision but delivered only dependence. 30 kilometers to extraction point, Whiskey 7, 6 hours until dawn. 3 hours head start before the enemy realized they'd been sent to the wrong location. The math was tight, but possible. She'd have to move fast, sacrifice stealth for speed, cover ground in darkness that most soldiers wouldn't attempt even in daylight. But she wasn't most soldiers. She was Kira Ashford, granddaughter of Garrett Ashford, student of Brennan Wolf, last warrior standing in a war that had spanned 3 decades. And she was going home. She packed her gear, checked her compass. Korean War vintage, magnetic north, no batteries, no failure points. Started moving northeast, fast march, 7-minute miles through broken terrain in absolute darkness. The kind of pace that destroyed ankles and knees. The kind that separated those who trained hard from those who trained smart. Hour after hour, mile after mile. The desert stretched endlessly ahead. Behind her, somewhere in the darkness, 63 soldiers were preparing to hunt a ghost. But the ghost was already gone. At 0400, she heard helicopters behind her, distant but getting closer. They'd found Volkov's false coordinates, realized she wasn't there, expanded their search pattern. She increased her pace, pushing past exhaustion, past pain, past everything except the need to move, to serve it, to complete the mission. At 0530, dawn began painting the eastern sky. She was still 8 kilometers from extraction. Too far. The helicopters would spot her in daylight. She'd never make it. Unless she found a wadi, deep, narrow, the kind that stayed cool even in desert heat, the kind that defeated thermal imaging because the temperature differential was minimal. She went to ground, covered herself with her thermal poncho, became part of the terrain. The helicopters passed overhead. Twice. 3 times. Searching, scanning, hunting. But they didn't see her. Old school techniques defeating modern technology. Just like Grandpa Garrett had promised. She waited until 0800, until the helicopters moved their search pattern further south, following the false trail Volkov had laid. Then she moved again. Final 8 kilometers, maximum effort, everything she had left. At 0915, she crested a rise and saw it, the dry lake bed, shimmering in morning heat, and on the far side, barely visible, a vehicle. American. She pulled out the signal mirror, flashed recognition codes, Morse code, the kind that required no radio, no encryption, just reflected sunlight and training. The vehicle flashed back. Correct response. She started running, full sprint, across open ground, exposed, vulnerable, but so close now. The vehicle raced toward her, meeting her halfway, stopped. Door flung open. Brennan Wolf's weathered face, grinning. "Get in, kid. We've got company coming." She dove into the vehicle. It was already moving before the door closed. Behind them, helicopters appeared over the horizon, closing fast. Then the radio crackled. Different voice. Network frequency. She could hear it through the vehicle's comms. "All units, priority alert. American extraction in progress. Grid November 7-2. Colonel Volkov has been compromised. Repeat, Volkov is a traitor. Kill on sight. No survivors, American or otherwise." Kira's blood went cold. They know about Volkov. Wolf's jaw tightened. He knew this would happen. Gave you the extraction point anyway. That's why he went dark. He's dead. Maybe. Or maybe he's the best operator I've ever seen. Either way, he bought you time. Honor that by staying alive. "Hold on," Wolf said. He keyed a radio. "Overwatch, this is Recovery 6. I have the package. Request immediate air support. Danger close." The response was instant. "Recovery 6 Overwatch. Air support inbound. 30 seconds. 2 F-18s appeared from nowhere, screaming across the desert at 500 feet. The helicopters broke off immediately, scattered, running for safety. The vehicle raced toward friendly territory. Wolf looked at Kira, really looked at her. "You did it, kid. 72 hours, 17 confirmed kills, 0 support. And you brought out intelligence that's going to dismantle the biggest rogue intelligence network since the Cold War." He paused. "Your grandfather would be so damn proud." Kira felt something break inside her, all the fear and exhaustion and pain she'd been holding back for 3 days. She didn't cry. Ashford's didn't cry, but her hands shook. Wolf saw it, put a hand on her shoulder. "Easy, kid. You're safe now. Mission complete. You can stand down." She nodded, couldn't speak. Just held the laptop with its stolen secrets. The intelligence that had cost Mallory his life. That had cost her everything she had. But it was worth it. Because some wars were bigger than one person. Some missions mattered more than survival. And because Ashford's finished what they started. No matter the cost. The drive to friendly territory took 3 hours. 3 hours of silence, broken only by encrypted radio traffic and the hum of the engine. Kira sat in the back of the armored SUV, still gripping the laptop, still feeling the weight of 72 hours pressing down on her shoulders. Wolf rode shotgun, constantly scanning the horizon. 2 more vehicles flanked them. Security, making sure nothing interrupted the extraction, making sure the intelligence made it home, making sure she made it home. At the border crossing, they transferred to a Black Hawk, military airspace, full protection. The kind of resources that made it clear this operation had been priority 1 from the beginning. Commander Victoria Hayes was waiting at the forward operating base. She looked exhausted, like she'd aged 5 years in 3 days. "Staff Sergeant Ashford," she said formally. Then her composure cracked. "Jesus Christ, Kira. We thought we'd lost you." "Almost did, ma'am." Hayes took the laptop, handed it immediately to an intelligence officer who'd been waiting. "Get this to Oni, immediate priority. I want a full breakdown of Operation Homecoming within 6 hours." She turned back to Kira. "Medical is waiting. You need to be checked out. Dehydration, possible concussion. Those ribs need imaging. I'm fine, ma'am. That's an order, Staff Sergeant. Wolf stepped in. I'll take her, Commander. Make sure she actually goes. Hayes nodded, started to walk away, stopped, turned back. Ashford, what you did out there, what you survived, there aren't words for it, but you need to know, Petty Officer Mallory, what happened to him. He volunteered, knew exactly what he was walking into. He died a hero. And when this is declassified in 50 years, people will know that. Kira's throat tightened. Yes, ma'am. Hayes left. Wolf guided Kira toward medical, but halfway there she stopped. Chief, I need to know, Volkov. Was he telling the truth about 1997, about trying to flip? Wolf was quiet for a long moment. Your grandfather never told you the full story. Classified, even after his death. But you've earned it. They found a quiet corner, away from the bustle of the base. Wolf pulled out a worn photograph. Different from the one he'd shown her before. This one showed Garrett Ashford with 3 other men, all in civilian clothes, all looking hard and dangerous. 1997. Your grandfather was running a clandestine operation, recruiting Soviet intelligence officers who wanted to defect. Volkov reached out through back channels, said he wanted to flip, had intelligence on network operations across Eastern Europe. Your grandfather believed him, set up a meeting, brought 3 CIA officers as support. The meeting was supposed to happen in Istanbul. Wolf's jaw tightened, but the network had compromised Volkov's communications. They knew about the meeting, sent a hit team, killed all 3 CIA officers. Your grandfather survived because he'd taken different security precautions, ones he'd learned in Desert Storm. After that, Volkov disappeared, went dark. We assumed he'd been compromised from the start, that the whole thing was a setup. Your grandfather spent years looking for him, never found him. Until now, Kira processed this. So Volkov's been trying to flip for 27 years. Looks that way, the intelligence you brought out. It includes details only someone deep inside the network would know. Either Volkov's the real deal or this is the most elaborate deception in intelligence history. Which do you think it is? Wolf smiled grimly. I think your grandfather was usually right about people, and he thought Volkov could be saved. That counts for something. They sat in silence, the weight of decades pressing down. 3 generations of warriors, all connected by one mission. One enemy, one choice about honor and redemption. Finally, Wolf spoke again. Come on, kid. Medical. Then debriefing. Then sleep. You've earned it. Medical found cracked ribs, severe dehydration, a mild concussion, and about 15 pounds of weight loss. They wanted to keep her for observation. She refused, signed waivers, walked out against medical advice. Some things you didn't do lying in a hospital bed. The debriefing took 6 hours. Intelligence officers from ONI CIA Defense Intelligence Agency, all of them asking questions, all of them trying to piece together exactly what had happened in those 72 hours. Kira told them everything. The ambush, the survival, the kills, the stolen intelligence, Volkov's communications, his claims about wanting to help. When she finished, the senior ONI officer leaned back. Staff Sergeant Ashford, what you've brought us is unprecedented. Operation Homecoming alone justifies the resources we've committed. But there's more here. Network safe houses, financial networks, communication protocols. Enough to dismantle an organization that's operated in the shadows for 3 decades. He paused. You should also know the intelligence you transmitted from the field. We've already started acting on it. Raids across 12 countries in the last 4 hours. 47 arrests so far, including several high-value targets we've been hunting for years. And Volkov, sir, do we know his status? The officer's expression was unreadable. Colonel Dmitry Volkov is officially listed as killed in action. According to network communications we've intercepted, he died in a helicopter crash 3 hours after your extraction. Hunting you. Did he bomb up Guido? We don't know. No body recovered. Crash site was in deep desert. Could be genuine. Could be cover for a defection. We're still working that angle. Kira nodded, but inside something twisted. Volkov, the man who'd hunted her, the man who'd saved her. The enemy who'd become what an ally. A ghost seeking redemption. She thought about his last words. About warriors choosing honor. About debts paid across decades. If he'd died, it was because he'd chosen to. Because after 27 years of guilt, he'd finally found a way to make things right. That was more than redemption. That was sacrifice, the highest kind. And whether his body lay in a desert grave or he'd vanished into a new life somewhere, Kira understood one thing with certainty: Colonel Dmitry Volkov had earned his peace. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly, "for everything." The officer didn't ask what she meant. Some things didn't need explanation. The debriefing ended. She walked out into the late afternoon sun, exhausted beyond measure. But the mission wasn't over. There was one more thing she had to do. Wolf found her at the base chapel. She wasn't religious, but it was quiet, private, a place to think. "They're flying Mallory's body home tomorrow," he said quietly. "Full honors. His family will be at Dover Air Force Base to receive him." "I want to be there." "I know. Already arranged it. Yumi Hayes will escort him home." Kira looked at the simple wooden cross on the chapel wall. "Chief, the video he made. He said to tell his sister that he died for something that mattered, that he wasn't a traitor. I'll make sure she knows, all of it. But we can't tell her everything. It's classified. Some things don't need to be said out loud. She'll understand what matters. That her brother was a hero, that he chose sacrifice over safety, that he died protecting his team." Kira turned to face him, really looked at the old warrior. 58 years old, 3 decades of classified operations. A promise made to a dying friend to watch over his granddaughter. "You've been hunting them since '91. The network, my grandfather's war. You made it yours. Your grandfather saved my life in Desert Storm, not from enemy fire, from myself. I was young, angry, made stupid decisions that almost got my team killed. He pulled me aside, taught me what it meant to be a warrior instead of just a soldier. When he told me about his granddaughter, about you, he said, 'Brennan, if anything happens to me, she'll need someone who understands, someone who can teach her what I taught you.' I promised him, and I keep my promises, even when it means using me as bait." Wolf's expression didn't change, especially then, because I knew you could handle it, knew you had the skills, the training, the Ashford blood, and because sometimes the only way to win is to take risks that terrify you. Did it terrify you? Every goddamn hour, I wanted to be out there with you. Hayes had to physically restrain me twice from taking a helicopter into hostile territory, but that would have compromised the operation, would have tipped off the network that we were running a counter-op. So I sat in the operations center, watched satellite feeds, listened to intercepts, and prayed to a God I'm not sure I believe in, that Garrett Ashford's granddaughter was as good as her grandfather. And Wolf smiled, a real smile, proud. "You're better. He survived Desert Storm. You survived something worse, with less support, less intelligence, less everything. And you did it using techniques from the 1950s. Made them work in 2024. That's not just skill, kid. That's genius." They stood in silence. 2 warriors, different generations, same fight. Finally, Wolf spoke again. "There's something else. A recommendation. From Hayes, from Oni, from everyone who's reviewed what happened. Sir, they want you to start a training program, advanced SEER, desert survival, based on your grandfather's techniques. The old ways, Korean War era stuff. Things that most modern operators have never seen. They want me to teach. They want you to pass it on, the way your grandfather passed it to me, the way I passed it to you, because what you proved out there is that the old ways still work, that sometimes low-tech beats high-tech, that warrior skill matters more than fancy equipment." Kira thought about it, about Grandpa Garrett's lessons, about the compass and the signal mirror and all the techniques that had kept her alive when everything else failed. "When do I start?" "After Mallory's funeral. After you've had time to process, after you're ready." "I'm ready now." "No, you're not. You're running on fumes and stubbornness. Go home, see your family, sleep in a real bed, eat real food, heal. The war will still be here when you get back." He was right. She knew it. But admitting it felt like weakness. Wolf saw it on her face. "Kira, strength isn't about never resting. It's about knowing when to push and when to recover. Your grandfather taught me that too. Said the difference between a warrior and a corpse is knowing when to fight and when to live." She nodded, finally letting herself feel the exhaustion. 3 weeks, then I start." "Deal." 6 months later, Kira stood in front of 120 SEAL candidates at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado, California. The sun was bright, the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly to the west, and she wore the rank insignia of Master Chief Petty Officer. The promotion had been fast-tracked. Recognition for her actions in the desert. for the intelligence she'd brought back, for the network operations she'd helped dismantle. But she wasn't here because of rank. She was here because she had something to teach. Good morning, I'm Master Chief Kira Ashford. My grandfather, Colonel Garrett Ashford, fought in Desert Storm. He learned survival techniques from Korean War veterans, men who'd been shot down over North Korea in the 1950s and had to evade enemy forces for weeks with nothing but what they carried. My grandfather taught those techniques to Master Chief Brennan Wolf. Chief Wolf taught them to me. Now I'm teaching them to you. She let that sink in. Why? Because 6 months ago I got left behind in hostile territory. 72 hours, no radio, no water, enemy battalion hunting me. I survived using only these techniques. Techniques that are older than your parents. Older than GPS and thermal imaging and all the technology you think makes you invincible. A hand went up. Young operator, maybe 23. Confident. Master Chief, with all respect, why do we need to learn techniques from the 50s? We have satellite phones, GPS drones, extraction on demand. Kira smiled. She'd expected this question. Because 6 months ago I had all of that, and then an IED flipped my vehicle. Radio destroyed, GPS destroyed. All that modern technology turned into expensive garbage in about 3 seconds. But you know what still worked? A compass from the Korean War. A signal mirror from the same era. Knowing how to find water by reading terrain. Knowing how to move without being seen by thermal imaging. The enemy had drones, satellites, helicopter gunships. I had a knife, a poncho, and my grandfather's training. Guess who walked out alive? The confident operator nodded slowly. Understanding. Now, some of you are thinking this is outdated. Old man stuff. Your generation has better ways. She looked at each of them. 6 months ago, I killed 17 enemy soldiers, destroyed 3 vehicles, a patrol base, a supply convoy, all while outnumbered 60 to 1, using techniques your grandfathers would recognize. Technology fails, batteries die, electronics break. But a warrior who understands terrain, patience, and the refusal to quit, that's eternal. My grandfather learned it from men who fought in Korea. He taught Chief Wolf in Desert Storm. Chief Wolf taught me. Now I teach you not because it's old, because it works, because it saves lives, because someday your fancy equipment will fail, and all you'll have is your training and your will to survive. That's what this course is about. The stuff that never changes. The warrior skills that work today exactly like they worked 70 years ago. Because deserts don't care about your technology. Heat doesn't care about your rank. And enemies who want you dead don't care that you've got the latest gear. She paused. Questions. A female operator raised her hand. Master Chief, how do we know these techniques are still relevant? Good question. Next week, you'll each spend 72 hours alone in the desert. Minimal equipment, no modern navigation, no communication except emergency beacon. You'll find water, navigate by stars, evade simulated enemy patrols. Everything I did, you'll do. Some of you will fail. That's fine. Failure teaches. But some of you will succeed. You'll learn that you're capable of more than you thought. That you can survive things that should kill you. That you're harder to kill than the enemy thinks. Because that's what being a SEAL means. Not having the best gear, being the best warrior, and warriors never stop learning, never stop adapting, never quit. The candidates looked at her with new respect. This wasn't theory, this was a warrior who'd proven everything she was teaching. One more thing, some of you will wonder why I'm standing here teaching instead of operating. Fair question. The answer is simple. My grandfather started a war against an enemy that threatened everything we stand for. He fought it for 30 years. Chief Wolf continued it. I finished it. Now my job is to make sure the next generation is ready for their war, whatever it is, wherever it happens. Because there's always another war, always another enemy, always another desert where warriors need to survive. And the only way we survive as a nation is if we pass knowledge forward, generation to generation. Korean War to Desert Storm to Afghanistan to whatever comes next. That's legacy. That's duty. That's why I'm here. The candidates were silent, understanding the weight of what she was saying. Wolf stood at the back of the room, watching, proud. When Kira finished, he gave her a small nod. You did good, kid. The first class graduated 12 weeks later. 115 out of 120 candidates passed. The 5 who failed weren't weak. They just needed more time, more training. They'd be back. Kira watched them receive their certificates. Watched them understand that they'd learned something irreplaceable, something that might save their lives someday. After the ceremony, a young operator approached, the one who'd asked the first question. Master Chief, I wanted to say I was wrong about the old techniques being outdated. 3 weeks ago, during the survival evolution, my GPS failed. Batteries died. I was lost. Thought I'd fail the course. But then I remembered your compass technique, using the sun, reading terrain. I found my way back using methods from 70 years ago, and I realized you were right. The old ways work because they're based on things that never change. Terrain, weather, human endurance. Thank you for teaching us. Kira nodded. Pass it forward. When you're my age, teach the next generation. That's how knowledge survives. That's how warriors live forever. The operator saluted. Sharp, clean. She returned it. 3 years later, Kira stood in an observation room watching a new candidate struggle through her final evaluation. Female operator, 25 years old, exhausted, sunburned, but refusing to quit. Beside her stood Wolf, retired now, but still involved as a civilian consultant, still watching over the program, still keeping his promise to Garrett Ashford. She reminds me of you, he said quietly. At that age, stubborn, skilled, refuses to accept failure. She's better than I was, more creative, better tactical instincts. You trained her well. They watched in silence as the candidate made a critical decision. Found water using the old techniques, set up a defensive position, prepared for the final phase. I got something for you, Wolf said. He pulled out an envelope, worn, sealed. Your grandfather gave this to me in 2019, year before he died. Said to give it to you when you were ready. I think now's the time. Kira took the envelope, her hands shaking slightly. She opened it, found a letter in Grandpa Garrett's handwriting. Kira, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've survived something that should have killed you. Because that's what Ashfords do. We survive. We endure. We finish what we start. I taught you everything I knew. The techniques that kept me alive in Desert Storm. The lessons I learned from men better than me. The understanding that being a warrior isn't about killing, it's about protecting, about choosing when to fight and when to show mercy. You've probably met Dmitry Volkov by now. If you haven't killed him, good. He's not your enemy. He's a good man who made bad choices. Like all of us, give him a chance to make things right. And if you're teaching now, passing forward what I taught you, then I'm proud. Because that's the real legacy, not the kills, not the medals, not the missions that stay classified forever. It's the knowledge, the skills, the warrior spirit that passes from generation to generation. I learned from Korean war pilots. I taught Wolf. Wolf taught you, now you teach others. And someday those others will teach someone else. That's how warriors achieve immortality. Not through fame, through legacy. Take care of yourself, Kira. Take care of the next generation. And remember that being an Ashford means more than surviving. It means knowing why you survive, what you're fighting for, who you're protecting. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'll be watching from wherever warriors go when the mission finally ends. Your grandfather, Garrett. Kira folded the letter carefully, her throat tight. Wolf put a hand on her shoulder. He knew, kid, before he died. He knew you'd be here, doing this, making him proud. How could he know? Because he knew you, knew the Ashford blood, knew that when you made a promise, you kept it, just like he kept his promises, just like I kept mine. They watched the candidate complete her evolution. Successful, exhausted, but alive. Kira keyed the radio. Falcon 73, this is Evaluation Command. You've passed Phase 1. Welcome to the hardest 3 days of your life. The candidate's response came back, tired but determined. Copy that, command. Bring it on. Wolf chuckled. Yeah, definitely reminds me of you. After the evaluation, Kira did something she'd been avoiding for 3 years. She visited Grandpa Garrett's grave, Fort Rosecrans National Cemetery, overlooking the Pacific. Thousands of white headstones, warriors who'd given everything. She found his marker, simple, clean, just his name, rank, and dates. Colonel Garrett Ashford, 1958-220. She knelt, placed her trident next to his headstone, the seal insignia she'd earned, the symbol of everything he'd taught her. Hey, Grandpa, sorry it took me so long to visit. Been busy, teaching, like you knew I would. The wind whispered through the cemetery, ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt. I read your letter. You were right about Volkov. He helped me, saved my life maybe. I don't know if he's alive or dead, but I hope he found peace, the way you wanted him to. And I'm teaching now, 300 students so far. Your techniques, your wisdom, everything you passed to Wolf, everything Wolf passed to me. It's all going forward to the next generation. Owen Mallory, you never met him, but he was good people, died protecting the mission, protecting me, like you would have done, like Wolf did. I make sure every student knows his story, knows what sacrifice means. She touched the headstone, cold marble under her fingers. I finished it, Grandpa. The war you started. The network is gone, dismantled, their operations exposed, their safe houses raided. Everything you fought for, everything you died for. It's done. And now I'm doing what you asked, passing it forward, making sure the next generation knows what you knew, that warriors live forever through the students they teach, through the legacy they leave. I miss you every day, but I'm not sad because you're still here, in every lesson I teach, in every student who learns the old ways, in every warrior who survives because they remembered what you taught me. That's immortality, Grandpa. That's how warriors never die. She stood, saluted, sharp, clean, the way he taught her. Then she walked away, not broken, just grateful. Grateful for the lessons, for the legacy, for the understanding that some wars span generations, and some warriors fight not for glory, but for the warriors who come after. 5 years after the desert, Kira stood at a podium in front of 200 SEAL operators, a conference on modern warfare and historical tactics. They wanted her to speak about combining old and new. 5 years ago, she began. I was left behind in hostile territory. 72 hours. No support. Enemy battalion hunting me. I survived using techniques from the Korean War. Techniques my grandfather learned and passed to me. Some people said it was luck. Others said it was training. Both are true. But the real reason I survived is that I understood something most modern warriors forget. Technology is a tool, not a crutch. Satellites and drones and GPS are amazing, but they're not substitutes for fundamental warrior skills, for understanding terrain, for patience, for the absolute refusal to quit. My grandfather fought in Desert Storm, learned from men who fought in Korea. He taught Master Chief Wolf. Chief Wolf taught me. Now I teach others. That's 5 generations of combat knowledge, 70 years of lessons learned, of techniques refined, of warriors teaching warriors. And here's what I've learned. The technology changes every decade. The enemies change. The missions change. But the warrior skills, those are eternal. Moving through terrain without being seen, finding water in desert, reading weather patterns, navigating by stars. Those worked in Korea. They worked in Desert Storm. They worked for me 5 years ago. They'll work 100 years from now. Because wars are fought by warriors, not machines. And warriors who understand both the old ways and the new ways, those are the most dangerous operators in the world. That's what I teach now. Balance, respect for technology but not dependence on it, appreciation for history, understanding that every generation of warriors has something to teach the next. My grandfather used to say that warriors achieve immortality not through fame but through legacy, through the knowledge they pass forward, through the students who carry their lessons into the next war. 5 years ago, I was fighting for my life, using my grandfather's techniques. Today, I fight a different battle, making sure his knowledge, his wisdom, his warrior spirit survives, making sure the next generation has every advantage, old and new, traditional and modern, everything that gives them the best chance to survive and win. That's my mission now, and I can't think of a better way to honor my grandfather. To honor Master Chief Wolf, to honor Petty Officer Owen Mallory, and every warrior who died so that others could learn. Thank you. The applause was immediate, genuine. 200 warriors understanding what she meant, what she was fighting for. After the speech, a young SEAL approached, nervous, respectful. Master Chief Ashford, I graduated your SEER course last year. I wanted to tell you. 2 months ago, I was on a mission in Syria. Helicopter went down, radio destroyed. I was separated from my team for 4 days. I survived using everything you taught us, found water like you showed us, navigated using stars, moved during the day when the enemy thought no one would be crazy enough to travel in that heat. When they extracted me, my team commander asked how I survived. I told him about your course, about the old techniques, about Master Chief Ashford, who proved they still work. He's requesting you come teach his team. They want to learn, they understand now. The old ways matter. Kira felt something warm in her chest, pride, satisfaction, the knowledge that it was working. The legacy was spreading. Tell your commander I'll be there, and tell him to bring his best warriors, because I'm going to push them harder than they've ever been pushed. That's how we honor the warriors who taught us, by refusing to accept anything less than excellence. The young SEAL saluted. Yes, Master Chief. Thank you. 10 years after the desert. Kira Ashford, now 47 years old, stood in the same observation room where Wolf had once watched her. On the monitors, a new generation of candidates struggled through their final evaluations. 25 students, all of them pushed to their limits, all of them learning the lessons that had kept warriors alive for 70 years. Beside her stood her new assistant instructor, the young SEAL who'd survived Syria, now a seasoned operator, ready to teach the next generation. And in the back of the room, in a wheelchair, but still sharp as ever, sat Brennan Wolf, 68 years old, 43 years since Desert Storm, but still showing up, still watching, still keeping his promise. They're good kids, he said quietly. Remind me of us, back when we thought we knew everything. They'll learn, Kira replied. The desert teaches everyone eventually. Your grandfather would be proud, you know that, right? I hope so. I know so, because I knew him, knew what he valued, and what you've built here, this program. It's exactly what he dreamed of. Warriors teaching warriors, generation to generation, the knowledge that never dies. They watched in silence as the candidates completed their missions, some succeeding, some failing, all of them learning. Finally, Wolf spoke again, quietly, the voice of a man who'd seen everything, done everything, survived everything. Kira, I won't be here much longer. Doctor says maybe a year, maybe less. But before I go, I need to tell you something. Chief, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Your grandfather was the best man I ever knew. He saved my life, not just in combat, in every way that matters. Taught me what it meant to be a warrior instead of just a killer. Showed me that honor and mercy aren't weaknesses. They're strengths. And when he asked me to watch over his granddaughter, I said yes, because I owed him everything, because I wanted to keep my promise. But somewhere along the way, it became more than duty. You became like family, the daughter I never had, the legacy I never thought I'd leave. What you've built here, it's not just Garrett's legacy, it's ours. Everyone who believed that warriors matter, that skills matter, that passing knowledge forward matters. When I'm gone, keep it going. Keep teaching. Keep honoring the warriors who came before. Keep proving that the old ways still work. And know that I'm proud of you, just as proud as Garrett would be. You're everything we hoped you'd be, everything we knew you could be. Kira felt tears threaten, fought them back. Yes, Chief, I promise, Wolf nodded, satisfied. Good, now let's watch these kids earn their place in the legacy. That's what warriors do. We watch the next generation rise, and we know that when we're gone, something of us survives through them. That's immortality, Kira. That's what your grandfather understood. That's what I'm finally understanding. We live forever through the warriors we teach. They watch the monitors, 3 generations of knowledge. Korean War to Desert Storm to Syria to whatever came next. The techniques that never changed. The skills that never failed. The warrior spirit that never died. And Kira Ashford, granddaughter of Garrett, student of Wolf, survivor of the desert, knew that her grandfather had been right about everything. Warriors don't die when their bodies fail. They die when the last person who remembers their lessons is gone, when the knowledge stops flowing forward, when the legacy ends. But as long as someone teaches, as long as someone learns, as long as warriors pass truth to warriors across generations, they live forever. 15 years after the desert. Kira Ashford, now a captain in the Navy, stood at a cemetery in Virginia. Not Fort Rosecrans this time, Arlington National Cemetery, Section 60, where the warriors from Iraq and Afghanistan rested. She found the marker she was looking for, Petty Officer Owen Mallory, 1993-2024. She knelt, placed a trident next to his headstone, just like she'd done for her grandfather. Hey Owen, been a while. Sorry about that. Been busy. Teaching your nephew, actually. He came through my course last year, passed with honors. Said he wanted to follow in his uncle's footsteps. Be the kind of warrior who puts mission before self. He's good, Owen. Really good. Has your heart, your courage. Your understanding that some things matter more than survival. I tell every student your story now. How you knew you were compromised, how you volunteered anyway, how you died protecting your team, protecting me. That's what heroes do, not the flashy stuff, the quiet sacrifice that no one sees but everyone benefits from. The network is gone, completely. We got them all. Every safe house, every asset, every operation, everything you died for, it worked. Your sacrifice meant something. And your family, they're okay. Your sister knows the truth now. Can't tell her everything. Classified. But she knows you were a hero, that you saved lives, that you're the reason the program exists. The reason hundreds of warriors have learned to survive, Sun. That's legacy, Owen. That's immortality. You live on through every student who learns, through every warrior who survives because they remembered what you died to protect. She touched the cold marble, felt the weight of 15 years, of hundreds of students, of a legacy that stretched back 70 years and would continue another 70. Rest easy, brother. The watch continues. The mission succeeds. The warriors remember. She stood, saluted, sharp, clean, final. Then she walked away. Not sad, just grateful. Grateful for warriors like Owen Mallory, like Grandpa Garrett, like Master Chief Wolf. Warriors who understood that the real battle wasn't about killing enemies. It was about creating warriors who'd fight the next battle, and the next, and the next, forever. Because that's what warriors do. They fight, they teach, they pass forward everything that matters, so that when they're gone, something of them remains. In the students who carry their lessons, in the warriors who remember their names, in the legacy that never dies. Kira Ashford walked out of Arlington into the Virginia sunshine. 52 years old now, 2 decades of teaching, thousands of students, a legacy that would outlive her by generations. And she knew with absolute certainty that somewhere her grandfather was watching. Proud, satisfied, understanding that his war had ended, that his lessons survived, that the Ashford name meant something. Not fame, not glory, but the quiet knowledge that warriors helped warriors. That knowledge flowed forward. That honor mattered more than recognition. That was the Ashford way. That was the warrior way. That was the only way that mattered. Technology fails. Politics change. Enemies rise and fall. But warriors endure. Through the students they teach. Through the legacy they leave. Through the eternal truth that some things never change. The desert doesn't negotiate. Heat doesn't compromise. And enemies who want you dead don't care about your excuses. But a warrior who understands terrain and patience and the absolute refusal to quit, that's forever. That's immortal. That's what it means to be an Ashford. She got in her car. Drove back to Coronado, to the base, to the next class of students waiting to learn, waiting to hear about Korean war pilots and Desert Storm tactics, and a young SEAL who survived 72 hours in hell using techniques older than their grandparents, waiting to learn that they were part of something bigger than themselves. Part of a legacy that stretched back generations and would continue forward into a future none of them could imagine. That was teaching. That was legacy. That was immortality. And Master Chief Kira Ashford, granddaughter of Garrett, student of Wolf, survivor of the desert, teacher of thousands, knew exactly what she had to do. Keep teaching, keep fighting, keep passing forward the truth that warriors had always known. The truth Grandpa Garrett had taught her in the Arizona desert when she was 13 years old. The truth that had kept her alive in hell for 72 hours. The truth she now passed to thousands. Grandpa was right. He was always right. Technology fails, training endures, warriors live forever. Not through fame, through legacy. And that legacy spanning from Korea to Desert Storm to whatever wars the future held would never die. Because Ashfords kept their promises. Because warriors honored warriors. Because some things were eternal. 2 weeks after Arlington, an encrypted package arrived at Kira's office. No return address, just a postmark from Istanbul. Inside, a single photograph, black and white, recent. It showed an older man sitting at a cafe, Mediterranean coast, drinking coffee, reading a newspaper. Colonel Dmitry Volkov, alive. On the back, handwritten in English, Captain Ashford, the debt is paid. The war is finished. Some soldiers earn their redemption. Some find their peace. Tell Wolf he was right. Honor survives everything, even us. DV. Kira studied the photo for a long time. Then she placed it in her desk drawer, next to her grandfather's compass, next to Mallory's trident. Some warriors deserve to disappear, to find the peace they'd earned through decades of service, through sacrifice, through choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. She wouldn't report it, wouldn't tell Oni, wouldn't disturb the ghost who'd saved her life, because that was what Grandpa Garrett would have done. That was what honor demanded. She closed the drawer, locked it. Outside, another class of students waited, another generation ready to learn the old ways. The war was over. The legacy continued. And somewhere on a Mediterranean coast, an old warrior finally rested. That was enough. Some battles last a lifetime. Some wars span generations. Some legacies never end. And that was exactly as it should be. Because warriors never stop fighting. They just choose new battles, new missions, new ways to protect the warriors who come after. Forever.